Hi everyone. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so YouTube keeps showing you more content like this. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let's begin. I don't know if I should be writing this, and I sure as hell don't expect anyone to believe me, but I've got no one left to tell it to, and for whatever it's worth, I need it out of my head. It happened 10 years ago, but I remember every sound, every smell, every detail like it's tattooed into my brain. I used to think people exaggerated their memories when they were scared. Now I know better. I grew up in a place called Flat Hollow, Kansas, a fly-speck town in Jefferson County, about an hour west of Topeka. If you've never heard of it, I wouldn't blame you. Flat Hollow's not on most maps anymore. Hasn't been for years. It was all farms and silos and dirt roads stretching out to nowhere. We had one gas station, a diner that served pie so sweet it made your teeth ache, and a high school where you knew every single person by name. It was the kind of place people left. If you stayed, you either inherited land or married someone who did.
Oh, I fell into the first category.
My dad passed away in 2009, lung cancer from a lifetime of Pall Malls and grain dust. He left me the farm, 130 acres of wheat, corn, and sunflowers.
I didn't want it.
I'd gone to Wichita State with dreams of getting out, maybe teaching, maybe moving somewhere where the horizon didn't feel like a weight on your chest. But after he died, there was no one else to take over. So I came back. That first year was rough. Crops were dying for no reason, not just mine. Everybody's. Bugs would eat through whole fields overnight. Rain came late, then too hard. Machines broke more than usual. The land felt off. The only thing that seemed untouched was the old grain silo near the northern edge of my property. It wasn't mine. Belonged to the Wexler family, or it used to. They'd left Flat Hollow sometime in the 80s, never sold the land, never came back. Everyone said the silo was empty, abandoned, the rusted kind you see in postcards meant to romanticize rural decay, but it never rusted. Not really. Just got darker. Sometimes I'd drive past it on the ATV. The weeds never grew too close, not even crabgrass. And even on days when the sun baked everything bone dry, the silo cast this strange, cool shadow like it didn't belong in the heat. I didn't think much of it until late July that year, when my corn started turning black. Not brown, not yellow, black. I walked the field myself thinking it was mold, but there was no smell. The stalks weren't rotting. They were just dark, like something had sucked the color out. Even weirder, it was in a perfect line leading toward the silo, like something had dragged itself from there through the crops. I thought it might have been an animal, but there weren't any tracks, just the corn stained and brittle. I called up Hank Calloway, a friend of my dad's and the closest thing I had to a neighbor. His land was just east of mine, about half a mile down a dirt road. Hank was a good man, in that blunt, quiet farmer way, the kind of guy who fixed your tractor without asking, and left a six-pack on your porch if he heard you had a bad day. I showed him the field. He didn't say much. Just stood there with his hat in his hand, looking toward the silo. You didn't go near it, did you? He asked after a long pause. I shook my head. No, you think it's pests. He didn't answer right away. Could be, he said finally, though he didn't sound convinced. But I'd leave it be. Don't go up there, not alone. That night, around 2:30 a.m., I heard something on the roof. At first I thought it was raccoons. Happens sometimes, especially if you leave grain out, but it didn't sound like raccoons. Too heavy. Thud, scrat, rack, like someone dragging a shovel across the shingles. Then it stopped. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I found muddy prints on the porch, human-shaped, barefoot, too long. I convinced myself it was a prank, maybe some drunk kid from town messing around. But the prints weren't heading toward the house. They were heading away, from my front door toward the fields. I bought a shotgun that afternoon. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. The dogs started acting strange. Wouldn't go outside after dark. They'd just sit by the door, ears back, staring out toward the silo. I thought it was coyotes at first, but I never heard howls. Just silence. Dead, heavy silence that made your skin prickle. And the dreams. God, the dreams. I kept waking up in sweat-soaked sheets, heart hammering, unable to breathe. I'd dream of someone standing in my field, just beyond the floodlight, watching, always watching. Sometimes I'd dream I was in the silo, but I couldn't move. I could only hear something breathing behind me, slow, wet, and close. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Besides, I'd heard stories about that silo growing up. Every kid had. We used to dare each other to go up there at night. I never did though. Even then, it felt wrong, like it didn't want to be looked at. One evening in mid-August, I got a call from Hank's wife, May. She was in tears. "Hank's gone," she said. "He went out to check the southern fence line yesterday evening, and he never came back." I drove over and joined the search. Police were already combing the area. Hank's truck was found half submerged in a dry creek bed near the silo. Doors locked, keys still in the ignition. No signs of a struggle, no blood, just an old thermos on the passenger seat, still warm with coffee. They searched for 5 days. Dogs, drones, volunteer, nothing. After they called it off, I drove out there alone. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd see something they missed. Maybe I just needed to do something. The air changed when I got close. I know how that sounds, but I swear to God it got colder, even though it was still 92 degrees. The wind died. Everything went still. Not even the bugs chirped. The silo stood like it always had. Tall, metal, featureless. But the hatch was open. It hadn't been before. I stood there for a long time just staring. Then I heard it. Voice, weak, but clear. Help. It was Hank. I ran toward the silo, climbed the ladder without thinking. The voice echoed from inside, distorted, like it was bouncing off metal. "Hank," I yelled. "Where are you?" No answer, just silence. Then from behind me, "Help." I turned so fast I nearly fell. There was no one there. I should have left. I know I should have. But I climbed inside. The interior was pitch black, even with my flashlight. The light barely touched the walls. It felt too big inside, like the space didn't match the outside. The air smelled of rust and earth, and something sweet, rotten sweet, like meat gone bad. I called for Hank again. No response. Then I heard something move. Not walk, move, like fabric sliding over concrete, followed by a wet sound, a clicking. The beam of my flashlight flicked toward the sound, and I swear I saw something retreat into the corner. Not an animal, not a person, just tall, wrong. I bolted, didn't stop running until I was back in my truck. I didn't sleep for 3 days, left every light in the house on. I tried to convince myself it was stress, grief, maybe mold hallucinations. But the dreams didn't stop. The feeling of being watched didn't stop. 2 weeks later, May hung herself in their barn. She left a note. "He's not gone. He's waiting." By September, more farmers were reporting crop issues, black rot, spreading in clean lines toward the north edge of their land, tools going missing, animals disappearing. Nobody said it out loud, but we all knew. The silo, one by one people started leaving Flat Hollow, selling what they could, walking away from the rest. By Christmas, over half the town was gone. I should have gone too, but something kept me there. I told myself it was the farm, the land, my dad's legacy. But deep down I think I was waiting to see it again. I never did, but I still hear it. Some nights, when the wind's just right, I hear the clicking outside my window. I see footprints in the corn, long ones, barefoot, heading toward the silo. That thing in there, I don't think it feeds on flesh. I think it feeds on loss, on fear, on us. Flat Hollow's empty now. No one lives there. Roads overgrown, houses collapsing. The land's gone sour, but the silo's still standing, and the hatch is open. If you ever pass through Jefferson County and see a dark gray tower just past mile marker 47, don't stop, don't look. Whatever lives in there is still waiting, and it's always hungry. I don't think I've ever actually said all of this aloud or typed it all the way through, and I guess part of me always thought someone would come knocking if I did. But I'm 46 now, living in a different state, and if there's any time to unload this, it's now. I don't expect you to believe it, and honestly I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I wouldn't believe me either if I hadn't seen it. Mason Creek isn't on most maps anymore. It's one of those places that never quite made it into the 21st century. Located about 25 miles west of Roanoke, Virginia, it was just a blip of a town nestled against the Blue Ridge. I lived there until I was 17. Back then the population hovered somewhere around 900, most of whom were older folks who'd been there since before the post office burned down in '78. There wasn't much to do. We had a diner, a gas station, and an old Catholic church that never had more than 6 cars parked out front, even on Easter. Most of the kids just loitered around the community center or snuck off into the woods with cheap beer. You learned to make your own entertainment in Mason Creek, or lose your mind trying. The summer of 1996 was one of the hottest I can remember. Virginia heat isn't dry. It's a wet, heavy thing. You feel it in your bones, in your lungs, like you're breathing through a sponge. The air buzzed with cicadas, day and night, and people just stopped going out past noon. It was the kind of heat that made the power flicker when too many air conditioners ran at once. And somewhere around mid-July the creek dried up. That might not sound like much, but it mattered. Mason Creek was the whole reason the town existed. It wasn't deep, maybe waist-high in most parts, but it ran cold and clear even in July, cutting right through the middle of town. People fished there, swam, took their kids to play along the banks. Every third photo in a family album probably had that creek in the background. It wasn't just water.
It was part of the place, you know.
I remember the day it stopped running, July 13th. A Saturday. I was working at the gas station, burning alive in that stupid tan uniform, watching sweat drip off my elbows. Old Mr. Crowley came in like he did every morning. Same time, same order. A black coffee and a scratch ticket. But that morning he looked off, said something weird like the creek's gone dry, bone dry, like someone pulled the plug. I thought he was joking at first, but he wasn't a man who joked. By noon, half the town had wandered down to look at it, and yeah, sure enough, nothing. Just rocks, cracked mud, and a few fish carcasses already curling in the sun.
Even the frogs were gone. No croaking. No buzzing mosquitoes.
It was so quiet it felt like someone had thrown a blanket over the town. There were a lot of theories at first. A blockage upstream. Hell, even the old-timers who remembered the drought of '53 said it had never gone dry before, not once.
Some folks called the county, but no one really came.
Mason Creek had been off the radar for years.
It just didn't matter to anyone else.
By Monday things started to get weird. The first to go missing was Tommy Henderson.
He knew him. Not well, but enough.
He was a junior at my school, always kind of quiet, kept to himself, lived in one of those houses that backed up to the creek.
His mom said he went out after dinner to check on their dog. Hadn't come back.
She thought maybe he'd wandered down to the creek bed to look around, but she didn't hear anything.
Cops searched all night. Nothing. They brought dogs the next morning, but the dogs wouldn't go near the creek.
I saw one just sit down and whine, like something scared.
It's stiff.
By Friday, a second person disappeared.
Becky Rollins.
She was one of the waitresses at the diner, about 25, lived in the upstairs apartment above her parents' garage. Her shift ended at 10 p.m.
She walked home like she always did. A 5-minute stroll.
All of it in plain view of Main Street, but she never made it. I remember that night. My friend Jason and I were sitting on his porch drinking warm Mountain Dew and talking about whether we'd rather die by falling off a building or drowning. One of those dumb teenage hypotheticals. Around 10:30 we heard a scream, not a movie scream, something high and fast, full of panic.
And then silence.
We looked at each other and didn't move. It wasn't far, maybe a few blocks away, but neither of us had the guts to go look. Becky's dad came banging on doors the next morning, said she never came home. Her purse was found lying in the middle of the sidewalk. Her shoes were neatly placed next to it.
And nobody saw a damn thing. That's when people started whispering.
Saying the creek had something to do with it. that maybe something was in the mud, or under it.
Eeh.
The third one, well, nobody really talks about the third.
He was a drifter.
Showed up sometime in early July, right before the creek dried up, called himself Reed, though I doubt that was his real name. He'd been sleeping behind the church, sometimes in the abandoned tool shed by the creek's edge. One night,
Eeh.
maybe 2 weeks after Becky vanished, someone saw him walking through town covered in mud, muttering to himself. They found his sleeping bag the next morning, torn to shreds, not like by an animal, more like it had exploded outward. The trees around it were stripped bare of leaves. No sign of Reed, nothing in the papers. Sheriff just said he must have moved on. After that, people started leaving, quietly. No for sale signs, just empty houses and parked U-Hauls in the dead of night. My parents didn't want to believe anything was wrong. It's just the heat, my mom kept saying. People are on edge. But I could tell my dad didn't buy it. He started sleeping with a bat by the bed. I still don't know why I went down there that night. It was August 2nd, 11:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had just turned off the TV, some rerun of the X-Files. The air conditioner was rattling like it was about to die, and I couldn't sleep. I don't know what made me get up. Just this pull, like something was waiting. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed a flashlight and snuck out. The creek bed was only a 10-minute walk from our place. The moon was out, huge and white, and everything looked too sharp, like I was seeing it all through a camera lens. When I got to the old walking bridge, I stopped. The creek wasn't dry anymore. There was water in it, just a little, maybe an inch or two, trickling between the rocks. But it was black, not dark, black.
Like oil. Or tar.
And it didn't move right. It pulsed, almost like it was breathing. I should have turned around, but I didn't. I stepped onto the bridge and stared down, and that's when I saw it. There was a shape standing in the water. It looked like a man at first, tall, still, but there was something wrong with the way it stood, too rigid. Like it wasn't using joints, and it didn't have a face, or rather, it had too much face. Features that shifted when I tried to focus on them. Eyes that blinked out of order, a mouth that didn't stay put. It tilted its head at me, just slightly, and then it stepped backward into the water and disappeared.
No splash.
No ripple, just
Gone. Gone.
gone. I ran home so fast I barely remember doing it. I locked the door, pushed my dresser in front of it, and sat there until the sun came up. My mom asked why my hands were shaking. I told her I had a bad dream. The next day I went back. In the daylight, the creek was dry again, like nothing had ever been there. We moved out of Mason Creek 2 weeks later. My dad got a job offer in Raleigh, and he didn't hesitate. We packed everything, and left in the middle of the night, like everyone else had. I never went back. Over the years I tried to look it up. Mason Creek, the disappearances, the drought.
But there's nothing.
A few old census records, a blurry satellite photo that looks like scrubland. No mention of the creek, no reports about missing people. It's like the town got erased. But sometimes, and I swear I'm not making this up, sometimes I hear water running, not from the pipes, not the faucet, running water.
Trickling.
Breathing, and every time I do I check my feet, just to make sure I'm not standing in it. I don't talk about this anymore. Not because I'm over it, I'm not. But because when I do, people either look at me with that patronizing smile or get uncomfortable and shift the conversation. Even my wife, who's heard it once, asked me not to bring it up again, said it gave her the creeps, and she's not wrong. But lately I've been dreaming about her again, the girl behind the church, and I think maybe it's time I finally put it all down. This happened in the summer of 1982 in a town so small you wouldn't find it on most maps unless you were deliberately looking. Chilson, Indiana. Population, back then, maybe 1,200 on a good day. That's not to it 200 on a good day. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone. And if you weren't at church on Sunday, someone was knocking on your door by noon. I was 11 years old that summer. Still rode a bike with a banana seat, still believed in Santa, and still thought my dad could beat up anybody in the world. My younger brother Jamie was 9. We'd spend most of our days biking around the gravel roads, catching frogs near the pond or messing around the church grounds where we weren't supposed to be. The Baptist church stood on a small hill at the edge of town, white paint always chipping, the steeple leaning just slightly like it was tired. There was a little patch of woods behind it, maybe 20 or 30 yards thick, before it opened into cornfields. That's where we first saw her. It was a Sunday, late June. The sun had just dipped low enough to cast long shadows, and the air was that sticky kind of warm you only get right before a storm. We'd just come out of evening service, still dressed in our uncomfortable shirts and stiff shoes, and Jamie dared me to sneak around back and smoke a candy cigarette we'd stolen from Shelley's general store. We slipped past the parking lot and crept behind the building, laughing quietly, when Jamie suddenly stopped cold. He grabbed my arm, hard, and pointed. There was a girl standing just at the edge of the trees, barefoot, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with tangled blonde hair and a light blue dress that looked too big for her. She was facing away from us, but I could hear her crying. Not loudly, not sobbing, just a low, breathy kind of whimpering, like someone who'd already cried so much there was nothing left. "Who is that?" Jamie whispered. I shook my head. "Don't know." We watched for a second, unsure of what to do. Then, slowly, she turned. And I wish I could describe her face to you in a way that doesn't make me sound crazy. But the thing is, her face wasn't exactly wrong, just off. Her features were all there. Eyes, nose, mouth, but they didn't fit together quite right. Like a puzzle where someone forced the pieces into the wrong spots. Her eyes were too wide, her mouth too small, and her expression was vacant, like she saw us but didn't see us. She just stood there, staring, and then she smiled. Not a normal smile. Not a happy one. It was flat, almost like she was imitating what she thought a smile was supposed to look like. No joy behind it, no warmth. Jamie bolted, and I wasn't far behind. We didn't tell our parents. At that age you don't. We told ourselves it was probably someone visiting town, maybe a cousin of one of the church kids, but still we avoided the back of the church after that. The thing is, we weren't the only ones who saw her. About a week later at the diner, I overheard 2 older boys, probably high schoolers, talking about a weird girl behind the church. One of them said she was standing in the same spot, barefoot, just watching him through the trees. Another kid from our neighborhood said his little sister came home from Sunday school crying, saying a girl tried to talk to her behind the church but had a broken face. My mom chalked it up to gossip and kids being kids. Chilson had always had its share of odd rumors. One year it was a UFO seen in the cornfield. Another year, someone claimed the graveyard was haunted. This was just the latest. But it didn't stop. Every Sunday evening, like clockwork, someone spotted the girl behind the church. Same spot, same dress, same broken face. One Sunday in mid-July, Jamie and I got brave. I don't know why. Maybe we wanted to prove something. Maybe we were just dumb kids, but we decided to watch for her. Not up close this time. From a distance. We brought a pair of Dad's old binoculars and climbed onto the roof of the tool shed behind our house, which had just enough height to give us a view over the hill and into the back of the church lot. At exactly 6:47 p.m., I remember because Jamie checked his watch and whispered it. She stepped out of the trees, same dress, same hair, still barefoot, but this time she wasn't alone. There was a man standing behind her, tall, wearing dark clothes, face hidden behind one of those old-time gas masks. The kind with big round lenses and a long tube snout. He stood perfectly still, hands on the girl's shoulders. We both gasped, and I nearly dropped the binoculars. Then, and I swear this on my life, the girl raised one hand and pointed directly at us. We jumped down and ran inside, too scared to speak. That was the last time Jamie saw her. The following Sunday he got sick, high fever, vomiting, the works. Our mom kept him home. I went to church alone. I didn't see the girl that night, but as we were driving home, our car passed the church, and I swear I saw movement at the edge of the trees, a flutter of a blue dress, a pale hand disappearing behind a trunk. I started sleeping with the light on. August rolled in, and something shifted. The sighting stopped. People moved on, summer was dying, and then, one evening right before school started, my dad came home shaken. He'd been called to help out a buddy whose dog had gotten loose behind the church. They found the dog all right, dead, no visible injuries, just laying there in the dirt behind the church, eyes wide, tongue out, like it had died of fright. My dad never said much else about it, but I caught him pouring whiskey into his coffee the next morning. He wasn't a drinker. Years passed. I grew up, moved out, went to college in Bloomington. Jamie joined the Navy, then settled in Oregon. We never talked about it again, not until 2007. I was back in Chilson visiting my folks. Jamie had come too. One night, sitting out on the porch after the kids had gone to bed, he turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about her?" It had been 25 years. I knew exactly who he meant. "She's still in my dreams," he said. "Sometimes I see her in the trees outside my house." Just for a second, I didn't know what to say. My hands were shaking. A week after that visit, Jamie was found dead in his home. Suicide. That's what they said. But I know my brother. I know he wouldn't have done that. Not unless she came back. And now she's in my dreams again. I live in Michigan now, far from Chilson. But last Sunday, I woke up at 6:47 p.m. exactly. My window was open. The curtains were blowing in the breeze, and on the sidewalk below, just standing there barefoot in the rain, was a girl in a blue dress, smiling. But the smile still wasn't right. I don't really know what compelled me to write this. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not someone who likes scaring people. I've never even posted on Reddit until now. But something about what happened back in 2013 keeps clawing its way back into my head like a weed that won't stop growing no matter how many times I pull it up. I think writing it down might help. Maybe if I put it out there, someone else will say they saw what I saw. Or maybe I just want to feel less crazy. Either way, this is the truth, as best as I can remember it. I was 24 when it happened. It was mid-September. I remember that specifically because the nights had just started to get cool again. That early fall kind of cool where the air smells like dry leaves and distant smoke like someone burning brush across the county line. I had just moved to a small town in northeast Georgia called Hartwell, about an hour and a half northeast of Atlanta. I was staying with my cousin Jeremy, who had a place there. Nothing fancy. A single wide trailer tucked into the edge of the woods about a mile from Lake Hartwell. I'd just gotten laid off from a logistics job in Atlanta and didn't have much going on. So when Jeremy said I could crash with him and pick up some work around town, I took the offer. I figured I'd save a little money and move back into the city in a couple of months. Jeremy worked for a heating and cooling company, kind of a jack-of-all-trades operation, and had been doing odd jobs since high school. He was always getting pulled into weird gigs, and one of them happened to be at an old abandoned textile mill just outside of town. Hartwell Mill, it was called. I didn't know much about it, just a looming red brick skeleton half hidden by pine trees, surrounded by chain link and no trespassing signs. Locals mostly avoided it. Kids would sneak in sometimes to drink or screw around, but even they tended to keep their distance. I asked Jeremy what the deal was, and he gave me this weird look. He said, "You don't know about the fire." And when I shook my head, he just kind of shrugged and said, "Figures, folks don't talk about it much." Turns out, the mill burned down back in 1974, not entirely, just the west wing and part of the second floor. 19 people died, all workers, most of them trapped behind collapsed beams and machinery when the floor gave out. It happened in the middle of a night shift. They never figured out what started it. No sprinklers, no alarms, just smoke, heat, and silence. The really weird part, none of the survivors reported hearing anything. No screams, no cries for help, just silence, and then flames. I should have walked away then, but I was broke and bored and Jeremy needed a second set of hands. Someone, he wouldn't say who, had paid his boss to check out the boiler room in the east wing. Something about inspecting old ductwork or clearing out asbestos, I wasn't sure. It was a two-man job, and Jeremy didn't want to do it alone, so I agreed. We got there around 4:45 in the afternoon on a Friday. The weather was perfect, Blue sky, warm sun, maybe 68 or 70 degrees, the kind of early fall day that tricks you into thinking summer isn't over yet. We parked at the south end of the property, near a busted loading dock. The whole place was surrounded by a sagging chain-link fence with faded signs. Private property, no trespassing, the kind of place you're not supposed to be unless you know someone. But Jeremy had a key to the padlock on the gate. That was the first red flag I ignored. Who still has keys to a building that burned down 40 years ago? The inside of the mill was like stepping into a forgotten photograph. Dust hung in the air like it had nowhere else to go. Everything smelled like rust and ash and time. We walked through the main floor, long, cavernous, with rows of dead machinery covered in tarps and grime. Sunlight cut through broken windows and played tricks on my eyes. Everything was still, too still. We made our way to the east wing, the part that hadn't been damaged in the fire. Jeremy said the boiler room was down a narrow stairwell at the far end. We had to walk through a section of offices first, empty cubicles, a moldy break room with a cracked vending machine still full of 70s candy. I remember one of the Snickers bars had turned white with age. Jeremy made a joke about eating it for $20, but his voice didn't sound like it was really joking. We reached the boiler room around 5:30. It was dark, no windows, just a low ceiling, concrete walls, and a massive rusted boiler against the back wall like a sleeping iron beast. We had flashlights, but they didn't do much. Light just kind of died in there. Jeremy got to work checking the duct lines while I held the light. After maybe 10 minutes I started getting this weird feeling, like we weren't alone. I didn't hear anything, but every so often I'd get the sense that someone had just stepped out of view, like someone was behind me, just at the edge of the beam. I told myself, it was just the weird acoustics, the shadows, the fact that this place hadn't seen a human in years. I didn't want to seem jumpy in front of Jeremy. Then we heard it. A loud, metallic clank from somewhere above us, not a mouse, not settling wood. It sounded deliberate.
Heavy.
Jeremy froze and looked at me. Probably something shifting, he said, but he didn't believe it. I could see it in his face. He told me to go back upstairs and check the stairwell, just to be sure no one else was inside. I didn't want to go alone, but I also didn't want to argue, so I did. I made it halfway up the stairs when I heard footsteps above me. Heavy, slow, measured, not boots, not heels, just soft thuds, like someone walking barefoot on concrete.
Hello?
I called out. Nothing. I reached the top and swept the flashlight across the office floor. Empty, dust undisturbed. No footprints, no open doors, but the air had changed. It was colder, still, like the building was holding its breath. I turned to head back downstairs. And that's when I saw it, a figure, standing in the far office, just past the broken vending machine. I only caught a glimpse. A man, maybe, wearing old work clothes, coveralls or something. But what chilled me wasn't how he looked. It was that he wasn't moving. Not a twitch, not a blink, just standing perfectly still, arms at his sides like he'd been standing there for hours. And then he stepped back into the shadows. Not fast, not slow, just gone. I sprinted back down the stairs. Jeremy was pale when I got there. Said he heard voices, whispers. But when I asked what they said,
Just shook his head.
It wasn't English, he said. Didn't even sound like words. We left. Neither of us said much on the drive home. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that clank in my head, and those footsteps. I started researching the file. There wasn't much. A couple of archived newspaper scans, most of them repeating the same details. Electrical malfunction, night shift, 19 dead. But I did find one interview with a survivor.
A woman named Delilah Martin.
She was in her 20s at the time. Her quote stayed with me. It was like something told us not to speak. We wanted to scream but we couldn't, not even when the fire. The next day, Jeremy said he wanted to go back. He said he left his wrench set down there.
He didn't want to lose it.
I told him to forget it. I'd buy him another one. But he insisted, said we'd be in and out in 5 minutes. We got there around 11:30 a.m. sunny, hotter than the day before. As we walked through the mill, it felt different, less dusty, cleaner, almost. I noticed marks on the floor I didn't see before, drag marks, footprints. At the top of the stairwell, I heard a sound, faint, but unmistakable, the rhythmic hiss and whir of machines. But there was no power in the building, no lights, no generators, just that sound, echoing from below. I told Jeremy. He nodded like he'd heard it too, but he kept walking. We got to the boiler room. His wrench set was gone. In its place, on the concrete floor, was a time card, one of those old punch cards from the 70s, yellowed with age. It had a name printed on it, Delilah Martin, and a timestamp, September 18th, 1974, 10 p.m. Jeremy picked it up and immediately dropped it like it burned him. I swear I saw steam come off his fingers. We left again. This time I didn't go back. 2 days later I tried to call Jerry. No answer. I went by his trailer. It was empty. Lights off. Door locked. Truck gone. I waited around a while, but he never showed up. I called his boss. He said Jeremy had quit without notice. No forwarding address. Just gone. A week later I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was Jeremy's wrench set, and the time card. In my dream I was walking the factory floor. The machines were running, looms clacking, belts spinning, steam hissing, but the workers weren't moving. They stood at their stations, facing forward, heads down, and none of them were speaking. Then I saw Jeremy among them, coveralls stained with soot, his mouth sewn shut.
I haven't dreamed since.
I moved back to Atlanta after that, got a new job, tried to forget, but sometimes, late at night I still hear that low mechanical hum, just beneath the silence, and I wonder if the fire or if it's still burning, just very, very quietly. I've never posted anything like this before. Honestly, I don't expect anyone to believe me, and that's fine. I just need to get it out. Maybe someone will read it and understand what I mean when I say that something doesn't add up, something broke in the fabric of my reality, and I've been living in the aftermath ever since. This started last summer, mid-July. I was 31, recently laid off from a tech support job and trying to make some extra cash flipping properties. I'd done it before with my cousin, buying cheap foreclosures, cleaning them up, reselling them. It was dirty work, but I liked the solitude. I've always been the type who prefers silence over small talk. That's how I ended up with the old building at 113 Rosewood Avenue. On paper it was a steal, a narrow 2-story brick property in the middle of a dying shopping district about 15 minutes outside Albany, New York. The ground floor used to be a small family-owned pharmacy called Rosewood Pharmacy and General, which had been shuttered for years. Above it was a cramped 1-bedroom apartment that probably hadn't been touched since the early 80s. The price was absurdly low, like suspiciously low, but it checked all the boxes for a quick turnaround. I closed the sale on July 12th. I remember because that night I celebrated with cheap whiskey and frozen pizza in the empty upstairs apartment, sitting on a lawn chair under a bare ceiling bulb. It was humid as hell, and the only sound outside was the buzz of insects and the occasional groan of passing trucks. That part of town goes dead after 8 p.m. The next morning I started clearing out the pharmacy below. Most of the shelving units were still there, coated in dust, but empty. Old glass jars with faded labels like camphor and tincture of iodine sat along the back wall. It felt like walking through the bones of a forgotten body. The place had a weird smell like mildew and chalk, and something about it made the hair on my arms stand up, but I figured it was just old air. 3 days into cleaning, I noticed something odd in the back corner of the pharmacy near the old storage area. One of the floorboards behind the counter felt loose. At first I thought it was just warped from humidity, but when I stepped on it, it sank slightly. I knelt down and pried it up with the claw end of a hammer. Underneath was a hole, not just a crack or crawl space, a staircase. Narrow wooden steps leading down into blackness.
I nearly laughed out loud.
This wasn't on any of the blueprints or floor plans I got from the city. I even went back to double check.
No mention of a basement. I should have sealed it up right then, but curiosity won. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight to peek inside.
The air coming up was cold, way colder than it should have been in July. It smelled like earth and something sharp, rusty. I descended carefully, one step at a time, expecting to find maybe a root cellar or storm shelter.
Instead, I found a room. It wasn't big, maybe 10 by 10 feet, in concrete, encased in concrete. The walls were stained in places, dark blotches that looked suspiciously like old blood. In one corner was a metal chain bolted to the floor, maybe 4 feet long, rusted to hell. The concrete beneath was cracked and dented, like someone had struggled there. I tried not to let my imagination get ahead of me, but the longer I stood in that room, the more wrong it felt. There was something else against the far wall. Half buried under dirt and debris was a small wooden box. Inside was a leather-bound journal wrapped in wax paper. The first few pages were water damaged, but the rest were legible. The entries weren't water damaged, but the rest were legible. The entries weren't dated, but they were signed Yo Merrick. That name wasn't in any of the property records, census data, or a business license that I found. The entries were disturbing. They weren't detailed confessions or facts, anymore like fragmented thoughts. Paranoia. Despair. Whoever Merrick was, then someone or something was watching them, listening. One line stuck with me. There waits below, with each memory. I am becoming someone else. I am becoming someone else. I am becoming someone else. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the upstairs apartment with the journal on the table, flipping through it again and again and again. Some pages were blank. Others were filled with tight, angry scrawls repeated over and over. I didn't forget. Or keep the floor closed, keep it sealed, or over. I didn't forget. It took it. Or keep the floor closed, keep it sealed. By the next morning, I convinced myself it was some elaborate prank. Maybe some disgruntled tenant from the 70s. Maybe just a creative lunatic. I even called a buddy of mine who used to do urban exploration stuff and had him come check the place out with me. He didn't laugh when he saw the room. He just stared, and then said something that made my skin crawl. It's too clean. When I asked what he meant, he said that for a place that's supposed to be decades old, there was no dust, no cobwebs, no bugs, like something kept it clean. He left after 10 minutes. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked out and wouldn't answer my texts after that. I tried to keep working on the upstairs unit, but I could feel it like gravity was pulling me toward that hole in the floor. I started dreaming about it. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to footsteps in the pharmacy below. Slow, deliberate footsteps that never reached the stairs. One night around 3 a.m., I heard something else. Whispering. Faint, like it was coming through a wall, but close. I pressed my ear to the floor. Nothing. I told myself it was just pipes, maybe old HVAC. But the more I listened, the more I started to recognize the words. It was my name, over and over. I boarded up the hole the next morning. Nailed the floorboard up the hole the next morning. Nailed the floorboard shut and moved my stuff out. I put the place up for resale and told myself I was done with it. But 2 nights later, I woke up in my apartment, my real one, 20 miles away, with the journal on my nightstand. I never took it out of the building. I was sure of that. I threw it in the dumpster the next day. Except it came back. A week later, lying on the passenger seat of my truck, sealed in the same wax paper, just sitting there like it had never left. I took it to a friend who worked at a library archive at SUNY Albany and asked her to look up Yale Merrick. She found nothing. No birth records. No death certificate. Not even a mention in local newspapers. It was like the name didn't exist. Except for one thing. There was a handwritten note in a no-phone yard from 1979. Someone had dropped off a stack of books and journals. One of the entries read, Diary of Yale Merrick, returned for request. Returned to where? It didn't say. The next time I checked on the property, the back corner floorboard was open again. Just sitting open. Like something had come up. I never went down again. I sold the building for half of what I paid just to get rid of it. The buyer didn't ask questions. I didn't offer any. I still drive past it sometimes just to see if the new owner did anything with it. But it always looks the same. Empty windows. Dust on the glass. Like the building is holding its breath. Last week I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. It just said, each memory. I am becoming someone else. I've been forgetting things lately. Where I left my keys. The names of people I've known for years. Where I left my keys. The names of people I've known for years. I forgot my mother's birthday. I forgot I used to play guitar. And now I can't find the journal anymore. I didn't throw it out. I didn't move it. It's just gone. Like it was never there. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I hear footsteps downstairs. And I remember the chain. And I wonder if whatever was waiting down there is no longer waiting.